Hey guys, what's up? It's Megan and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. So in my last video, I did part 1 to my Manic episode. There's a lot of details to go over, a lot of things that happened, so I hope that breaking it up into different parts helps you guys understand and follow the story a little bit better. So I believe I left off with that I went down to an area on a highway nearby my house where a lot of drug addicts were hanging out at the time, a lot of people that were addicted to meth. And so I strolled my way down there, was giving away clothes, giving away toilet paper. I even remember going into a gas station and buying like 20 packs of cigarettes and just handing them out to people, because when you're manic, you make really bad choices as far as spending. You don't care how much things cost or how much money you're spending. So I was just excited to be kind to people and give them what they were after, which, you know, made all these people that were homeless and addicted to drugs attracted to me because I was giving them free things, but it also set me up to get taken advantage of. So a lot of it is a blur ever since I went down to this area on the highway between then and then landing in the psych ward. But basically what I remember is that I was at the gas station buying a bunch of cigarettes. I remember I bought like white wine and put it in a tall like Pepsi cup, and I was just drinking, and this is in April of 2017, and I'm just walking around drunk, just like meeting people. And I specifically remember I was standing in the parking lot of a gas station and a girl stormed up on me. I remember I had a bag full of cigarettes, a bag full of candy, and Pringles and chips and snacks and stuff like that, and I was just handing it out to people, and I was standing there and I was drunk, and this girl stormed up on me, and I said to her very innocently, like, oh, do you want some Pringles? And she's like, yeah, I want some Pringles. And she stormed up on me, ripped the can of Pringles out of my hand, and sucker punched me as hard as she could, like in the side of my head. And I remember just like falling over and hysterically crying, and from that point forward, I was just completely, I was already out of control, but I remember that kind of signified just like, I'm done. Like, no, I felt like I had no support from anyone. I felt like no one understood where I was coming from, and then I just got fucking punched in the head. I remember I couldn't hear anything, and that's when someone came up to me when I was crying in a parking lot of a Home Depot, and they said, oh, try this, you'll feel better. And it was meth. So I'm very embarrassed to say that I've tried meth, but it's the truth. It's a part of my story, and unfortunately, I was already basically in a psychosis, but once I tried meth and then came off of meth, I did way too much. I mean, it's never good to do meth, but especially your first time, I did so much that when I came down from my high, I started having auditory hallucinations. I was seeing shit that wasn't there. So I ended up calling my aunt one day and had her come and meet me. And I remember I was in a restaurant by myself, of course, ordering a ton of food by myself, just sitting there. And I remember I started not to feel well, and I was actually coming down from the meth. And basically my aunt came and picked me up and drove me to a parking lot where my mom met us. And I remember sitting in the car, and I saw a black male standing at the window of my car, and I told my mom and my aunt, like, get this dude away from the car now. And they were like, Megan, there's no one there. And I started hysterically crying and screaming because I saw the guy. He was standing right there, but I was totally delusional, totally paranoid, totally hallucinating because I was coming down from being high on meth. So my mom and my aunt were like, we need to take you to the emergency room. And I was like, hell no, I'm not going to the emergency room, because they're going to send me to the psych ward, and I'm not going to the psych ward because I was afraid to get sexually violated by one of the staff at the psych ward, because that's what had happened to me at the first psych ward that I stayed at. And so basically I wouldn't go to the emergency room. I was like, I'm not going. But then I called one of my friends. She actually went to college for mental health. And so I called her, and because I trust her opinion, and I said, this is what's happening. I'm seeing things, like, what do I do? She was like, you need to go to the emergency room. And so I was like, okay. So I went to the emergency room, and I just remember they put me in this freaky room where it was all white with like a cot. It was basically like a jail cell. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I am seeing things, I'm hallucinating, and you're putting me in a room that's all white, so creepy. I remember telling the nurse, you should paint these walls lavender and have positive quotes on the walls, so when people are sick and they have to come in here and wait for a bed in the emergency room, they feel relaxed and happy, which I still think that's a good idea. I did have some good ideas when I was manic, but anyways, it's all just such a blur. But basically, I just remember being in a hospital bed and them telling me that I'm going to the psych ward, and I flipped out. They put me in restraints, like they cuffed me at my hands and at my feet so I couldn't move, and they shot me in the arm with heal.I'm, which is a drug that basically, it's a tranquilizer, pretty much. And the next thing I know, I wake up in a psych ward, and this was a psych ward down, if you're from the Seattle area, it was down in Burien, kind of by the airport. And this whole hospital stay was a complete blur. I think I was there between like 3 and 5 days. I honestly don't remember, but I remember my mom tried to come and visit me, and like I wouldn't see her. But I remember this psych ward stay being especially fun, probably because I was so manic. Like, honestly, when I'm manic, like, the psych ward is so fun for me. I'm in there with people that are also mentally ill, and it's just honestly like a really good time. Like, I don't recommend going to the psych ward, and I don't ever want to go there again. And you know, it's not the place to be, but you know, when you're manic, it is hilarious. Like, everything is funny. I'm goofy as fuck when I'm manic, so I remember having a good time. But they released me, and I remember when they released me, I didn't have my purse, and I'm like, where's my purse? Come to find out later, the emergency room messed up and didn't send it on the ambulance with me. So I get released, and all I have is my cell phone, and I'm literally a good hour away from my house, just walking on the streets. And I called an Uber, and the Uber came and got me. And then I told the Uber driver, like, yo, I need some cigarettes. So he bought me some cigarettes. And then, like, once I got my money, I paid him back, or maybe I didn't. Like, I honestly can't remember. And so this was in April, and then I asked him to drop me off back at the area on the highway by my house where all my drug addict, homeless friends were, because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who I could trust. And for whatever reason, when I was manic, I just really wanted to be around this particular group of people. They actually gave me a hood street name. They called me QP for cutie pie, so that's my street name, is QP. I think that's so funny. I mean, all of this obviously is not funny at all. It's very serious, very dangerous. I mean, I got freaking sucker punched and jumped, and I have to look back on this now that it's been a couple of years and laugh about it, because again, it's not funny, but the way that I deal with things is by laughing at it and by just kind of joking about it, because it's so traumatizing that I did all these things, that I went through all of these things. So during the month of April, I went to 2 psych wards and to jail 3 different times. In jail, I was treated absolutely disgusting. Looking back, I am just mortified at how I was treated. I remember, this is kind of gross, but I was on my period, and because my behavior was so erratic in jail, they refused to give me a tampon. Like, they just let me bleed all over the place without giving me feminine hygiene products or a shower, which is so disgusting. It's just sad the way that mentally ill people get treated in jail. I had a firsthand experience of what people get treated like, and it is despicable, absolutely despicable. Obviously in jail, they're not giving me my medication, and I'm not on the right medication. I still haven't been properly diagnosed. I probably have drugs in my system still, you know, like drugs change your brain chemistry. So I was just extremely sick, and because they wouldn't give me feminine hygiene products or a shower or let me call anybody. I was like, I'm gonna make the corrections officers' lives a living fucking hell. So on purpose, I would sing at the top of my lungs, I would kick the door, I would do handstands, I would perform concerts, I would take toilet paper and wrap it on my head in a headband. I would try to talk to every single person that walked by my cell. The entire time that I was in jail, all 3 times I was in solitary confinement, I was not allowed to have a roommate. The last time that I was in jail, there's basically a floor in jail where there's only like 6 cells, and from what I understand, I don't know what it's called, but it's where like they put like the craziest of the crazy people. Like again, there's only 6 cells and 1 person per cell, and there's 2 corrections officers to guard like 6 people, and I was one of those people. So I was actually diagnosed with bipolar type 1 disorder in jail. So what had happened was I was screaming and crying and punching the door, and I was actually begging the corrections officers to give me the chair, which is just like insane. Like, why would I want that? But I was like, if I'm gonna have the full jail experience, you might as well put me in the chair. They told me, if you don't shut the fuck up, you're gonna get it. And I'm like, okay. So kept being loud. And so finally they gave it to me, and they told me to go to the door, put my hands behind my back and put them through the little slot on the door where they, you know, serve you your food and whatever they're gonna give you on the outside of the door. They put it in this little slot. So I put my hands behind my back like this, and there was 2 male corrections officers and 2 female corrections officers, and they grabbed my wrists and pulled as hard as they could. So if you can imagine, like, my hands are behind my back, and through the other side of the door they pull my arms, and so I slammed back very, very hard, hit my head and fell to the ground. They all got on top of me and started beating the shit out of me, pulling my hair, telling me, you think you're a tough bitch, you don't know when to shut the fuck up. And the male corrections officer took my thumb, my hands are behind my back, he took my thumb and bent it until it touched my forearm. He sprained it. The doctor in jail told me that it was sprained later, but it hurt so bad. And then they plopped me down in the chair facing the wall, where I was like, it was like I was at an amusement park on a ride where they had this like thing that came down over me. My hands were cuffed to the chair and my ankles were cuffed to the chair, and I was left there for hours just screaming and crying with snot coming down my nose. They had to come check on me every couple of minutes, and so I said to the corrections officer when he came, please, please, like, loosen my cuffs, like, my thumb is broken, my thumb is broken. And he said, you fucking bitch, and spit on the window. So yeah, my jail experience was absolutely horrific. So many terrible things happened to me in there that I just don't really want to talk about. There's certain things that I'm willing to share and certain things that I just would rather keep to myself, but you get the gist. Jail was terrible. So they have in jail what's called an MHP, a mental health professional. And so I was in the chair, and this woman comes to the window, and she knocked on the window and she said, Megan? And I said, yeah, because I've been sitting there for hours just like cuffed to this chair, right? And I'm just like miserable. And so I'm like, yeah. And she's like, is this you? And so at the time I had a Facebook, and you know, I had a hair salon business, and so I had a Facebook salon page, and I had a picture that was taken of me when I'm healthy and looking well. And she held up her phone and she goes, is this you? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, do you own a business? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, Megan, this isn't you. You have bipolar type 1 disorder, and I'm transporting you from jail to the psych ward. We're not releasing you. And I was just like, oh my God, okay, sounds good. So from jail, an ambulance picked me up and took me to a psych ward where I was at for 14 days. I was extremely manic, extremely sick, Even when I got released from that psych ward, I was still extremely manic. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I had a psychiatrist I was working with in there that said that I had pressured speech and that I needed to stay in there longer. And so I threw a fit and demanded to get a new psychiatrist. So they gave me a new psychiatrist, and she was this cute little Asian lady, but she didn't speak the best English. And I remember when I'm manic, I can be very manipulative. I remember thinking to myself, okay, here's my chance to get out. I have a new psychiatrist, a great chance to make a first impression with her. When I met with her the first time, I purposefully tried to talk really slow. I tried to say exactly what I knew she wanted to hear, and I didn't beg her to get released because I know that that works against you. If you beg to get out of a psych ward, or you beg anyone in any of these situations to do anything, you're basically gonna wait longer. So I was just like, so whenever you think I should get released, like, that's fine. I do need to get back to work. I do need to get back to my life, but whatever you think is best. And sure as shit, she released me really soon after that because I worked her. So by this point, it's May of 2017. I get released from the psych ward, and I am still manic as fuck. I am so sick. I am still on the streets. I'm still doing dangerous things. I'm still picking up dangerous people, letting them go in my car with me. I was at the casino all the time. It's very dangerous for someone that has bipolar disorder when they're sick in an episode to have access to a lot of money, and I did have access to a lot of money, and there's a casino that's relatively near where I live, and I would book rooms there. I was basically living there. I mean, the casino's open 24/7, and so that's somewhere where I could go where it's warm, they have bathrooms. Sometimes sketchy people go to the casino, so there was lots of people that I could interact with and talk to. I would just meet new people. I would work people so that I could get money, get them to buy me drinks, get them to buy me food. I just became someone that I'm not at all when I was manic. And I have a hair client named Tammy, and I had done her hair for 8 years, and unbeknownst to me, her daughter has bipolar disorder, so she totally gets it. And I was friends with her on Facebook, and she had read some of my Facebook rants when I was manic, and she knew right away that I had bipolar because she also knew that I had taken a leave of absence from work months prior. So she contacted my mom and my husband and said, like, what do I gotta do to get in touch with Megan? And so she did visit me in the psych ward several times, and she became someone that I felt comfortable talking to. So every day I would call her as I was coming down from my manic episode. I had moved out of my house and gotten my own apartment, so I was living in my own apartment, and so every day basically I would hang out with Tammy. She would come to my house after work, and we would just talk, and you know, just feeling like I was understood meant so much to me. She really validated me and was super kind to me and treated me like a normal person, and she wasn't afraid of me. She didn't judge me, and I really appreciated that. Like, I will always be forever grateful for her because I don't know if I would have made it through that time period if it wasn't for her. So by June of 2017, I was coming down from my manic episode, and by July of 2017, I was back in a full-blown depression. The depression you fall into after a manic episode is, I can't even describe it. It's horrific because you level out and you recognize everything that you've done, everything that you've said, everyone that you've hurt, how much you've screwed up your life, and it is so overwhelming. You think to yourself, like, how am I ever gonna recover from this? How is anyone ever gonna like me again, accept me again? How am I gonna get through this? And by August of 2017, I was suicidal again. I had really bad suicidal ideation. I was coming up with plans on how to end my life. It was really scary. And up until that point, off and on, I was doing hair. And by August of 2017, I told my mom, like, that's a wrap. Like, I can't work anymore. Like, I'm so sick. I need to get better. By September, I had moved back in with my husband. We had worked things out. My husband is an amazing man. He didn't know that I had bipolar disorder. I'm gonna make a video with him coming up pretty soon, so I'm looking forward to that so we can hear his perspective on things. But it didn't take us long to get back together and for him to educate himself on my illness and be there for me. So from about July until October, I didn't drink at all. I was sober, mostly because I was so depressed. When I'm depressed, I have no desire to drink or to smoke weed. But going into October of 2017, I was starting to feel better. And so I had never addressed any of the issues that I had from my manic episode, like all the trauma of being in jail, all the trauma of being in the psych ward, all the trauma of being on the streets with homeless people doing drugs. I reintroduced alcohol into my life. That's when I began self-medicating. I had very, very severe PTSD. I think I've mentioned that I've also been diagnosed with PTSD besides bipolar type 1. So everything was fine between October 2017 and December 2017. I was drinking occasionally, but things started ramping up in January of 2018 again for me. And I started drinking more and more heavily as time went on. It wasn't just like an all of a sudden thing. It was very gradual. And by February of 2018, my drinking was full blown. It wasn't good. So I'm gonna stop my story right there. We will pick up where we left off of next time. Again, this is so therapeutic and nice for me to make these videos and get all of this off my chest and out there. I appreciate you guys watching part 2 of my manic episode. Again, manic episodes are extremely serious and can be life-threatening. And if someone that you know is manic, get help immediately. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe.